Now, where you kick off today, where we're starting in chapter 15, verse 14, he says this, and this is really cool. I love stuff where, and that's a very weird pastor thing to say, so I'm not trying to you should love it too. I'm saying that I love stuff where we get to see the people. And in what Paul writes about here, we get to see him. We get to see who he is a little bit, because he's going to talk about his personal ministry. He's going to talk about his philosophy about ministry. He's going to talk about that he can't wait to go see them. And, so you see a little bit of Paul, someone who we might be tempted to idolize, that when we think of him, he's got a big halo and maybe a cape and levitates wherever he goes. But as a matter of fact, that was not him. In the autobiographical statements that he makes, he says things like, the good that I want to do in my life, I don't do that. Instead, I find myself doing the evil I don't want to do. He's like us, right? We see him saying things like, when he writes to the Corinthians, when he's later on, when he's talking about that first letter that he wrote, that we have, he wrote probably 3, if not 4 letters to Corinth, but we have 2 of them. And when he's talking about that first letter, a letter of correction, a hard letter, he says, when I handed off the letter to be sent to you, I regretted it. There's such humanity in that. I regretted sending you that letter. He goes, because I knew it would grieve you. And because it was going to grieve you, it grieved me. And he goes, but then when you repented from what you were doing, I was so happy. And I didn't regret it anymore. Very human. This is who this is. So as we kind of dive into this, we'll see a little bit more about him. And I think the heart of God in that. Verse 14, I myself am satisfied about you, my brothers, that you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge and able to instruct one another. But on some points, I've written to you very boldly by way of reminder, because of the grace given me by God. We'll stop there for a second. So he's finished up in the first part of chapter 15, he's finished up the fact that that God is unifying the Gentiles and the Jews into one body to give glory to God, meaning doxa, good opinion, to point to how good God is, right? He says he finishes that, and then he kind of throws them a bone, if you will. And he says, I myself am satisfied about you, my brothers. That's, again, the Greek word for brothers and sisters. That you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to instruct one another. Sometimes, I don't want to make anybody offender for a word, but you know the rich young ruler? Remember that in the Gospels where the rich young ruler comes to Jesus and he says, good master. And Jesus says, there's only one good, and that is God. You guys remember that? Have you ever met or done someone, have you done it or met someone that you say something is good and they go, only one thing is good, and that's God? Right? I have. And I've done it jokingly too. But sometimes we're really reluctant to praise God's people because we think that we're going to rob Jesus of his glory. We can be reluctant to say, he's writing to Rome. What's Rome like? Well, Rome is about 1 million people right now. I don't know about right now, when this in 57 AD. I have no idea what it is right now. It's about 1 million people. In contrast, Jerusalem is 15,000, and Nazareth, his hometown, is 450. They established the Nazareth by how many graves there were, and they've excavated and so forth. So this gives you a little hint. Jerusalem, 15,000. Rome is 1 million. No city will come even close to it until Victorian England, London. So that's how long it reigns as one of the largest cities that's ever been. 1 million people. It's polytheistic. We've talked about it. We don't want to get gross, but it's polytheistic. It's very normal to give your children phallic necklaces. They celebrated phallic symbols. Everywhere you went was statues of exaggerated male and female bodies. And that's what they grew up in. So people are getting saved out of it. It's a melting pot. It's eerily similar to the United States of America, to be honest. But it's a melting pot. People actually immigrate to Rome at this time because it's a place where there's incredible opportunity for some. You have, right as you go into Rome through one of the main gates where there's I think it was Titus erected this huge celebratory archway type of thing. It's all engraved with pictures of them crushing the Jews and stealing everything from the temple from 70 AD. And so right in front of that is a giant memorial that a guy made himself and it's shaped like a bunch of baker's ovens. It's massive. It's like, I don't know, the size of this wall, and then there again, it's huge. He came and he just started a bakery, and he got rich in Rome. So this is what Rome is like. It's imagine America with togas, because that's what it is. But significantly more defiled. They excavate a lot of children's graves, and if you were like a pleb, which is kind of a Roman idea of somebody who's just a worker class, kids started working at about 6 years old. They've pulled skeletons out where they show massive wear at the growth plates of children because they're carrying these huge 50, 60-pound burdens at the age of like 6, 7 years old. Rome, where if you don't want your kid, you throw it in the street, and people just walk by and let it die. Or if somebody wants it, they'll pick it up. So this is Rome. So he's writing to Rome, and all these people are getting saved. Right? What's your life after you got saved? Did you get saved and know everything about the Bible and then become a perfect person? Probably not. Right? You were messy. You had issues. You had difficulties, things you didn't want to give up, things that you believed that were wrong, all those things, right? And then so you just have all these people. Imagine if you just started a church with nobody who had any church experience. What would that be like? Might be a little crazy, right? People making all sorts of weird suggestions. I'm thinking we should get a big idol of Jesus and stick it in here. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking we should do this. I really like having temple prostitutes. Maybe we should bring those in here. No, we don't really do that anymore because this is what Jesus said about that. I mean, just all the crazy, look at the crazy ideas we have today, right? And just multiply that, what's it been like in Rome. And yet Paul writes to the Romans and he says, I'm not writing to you because I'm mad or I think you somehow lack. He says, I think you're good. I think you're solid people that are trying to make your way. And I just want to write to you and to remind you of what Jesus did for you and how you can now walk with him and you can live a life that he's promised you. I really like that because we can get so, and I guess I'm like that. Maybe that's my hang up where I'm just like, no, we all suck completely. And that's just the way it is. And while that may be true by nature, our Adamic natures, the reality is that we're growing. And we may not be where we want to be in our walk, but we're hopefully moving towards it. And so Paul, he does the same thing. We're going to start 1 Corinthians in a couple weeks, right? What do you have going on in Corinth? You have a dude sleeping with his mother-in-law, like openly, like they come to church, and everybody's like, hey, that's cool, we're open here. You have people getting drunk at their potlucks and then partaking of communion and dying, the Lord killing them for it. You have people suing each other, borrow the lawnmower and break it, and you get sued for it. You have people using their gifts, their spiritual gifts, just to bring attention to themselves. Just standing up in the middle of meetings and speaking in tongues with no interpreter, just so everybody will appreciate them and their spirituality. Pretty dysfunctional, right? You might go to that church once or twice and be like, I think I'm going to go down the road. Only problem is there's no other church. It's just that one. And so Paul writes to them and he says, he opens the letter by saying, God's going to do a great work in you. He's doing a great work in you. He's going to confirm that great work to the end. He's got great plans for you. Oh, he's gifted your church. Your church has all the gifts and it's so great. God's doing such a good thing. I'm not saying that he's trying to just be Mr. Happy and never be real about things, but he looks, I think, very similar to how Jesus looks. And that is not to exactly how things are right now, but what they will be. Not everything that we're struggling with, but what we'll eventually become. Not that we're not realists, but to have encouragement for God's people. So he writes to the Roman church, just generically. He doesn't know everybody there. And he says, I'm convinced of your goodness. I'm convinced that God's doing a great work. I'm excited to see you, he's going to say later on. I think it's an important thing to an outlook that when we're coming to church, even though we are the church, we're coming to a location where God's people are going to be, and we're going to corporately worship God, and we're going to corporately read his word together and seek his face together, that when we show up, we go, these people are full of goodness. And I know they're going to have problems because they're like me. And I know that they're broken because they're like me. But that's not what I'm here to focus on. I'm not here to nitpick. I'm not here to worry about what people are doing. I'm not here to change their minds on peripheral things. I'm just here to worship God with these people and love them. That's what I'm here to do. And that's what Paul's talking about.